Last time I was up here, as you know, my life is good and I've been super blessed. And you were telling me to...
Everyone's super blessed.
Yes.
That's not the issue.
I've been lucky enough to allow it.
How much of the blessing that's raining down around you are you focused in and aware of, letting in, translating into manifested, obvious things? Yeah.
And so you had talked about baking the cake, and you said a lot of what I had done was really between me and Source, or me and God. And you're saying co-creation with other people could probably really take me to the next level and really be enjoyable. But you have to, you bump around with people more, so you have to maintain your connection and maintain...
Co-creating with others is wonderful because it is such an expansive experience. But it is helpful if you're solid in your own connection before you bump around with them. Because sometimes well-meaning people will, from your perspective, you'll become under their influence rather than under the influence of your source. And then those relationships are usually strained and temporary.
And so two, I guess, questions. One, it's been fantastic the last 2 years as old friends have come back into my life and we've created some amazing things together. And then there's been more contrast with some other people, some family members that we've just bumped into each other more aggressively. And
feel like step 1 contrast or step 5 contrast?
I feel like step 5, yeah.
Well, good stuff then.
Yeah. And so it's been fun, this process.
You use the word aggressive, however, which sounds a little step 1-ish.
Well, they feel similar. It's just whether or not you move.
No, they do not feel similar.
Really?
Really?
Mm-hmm. Okay, good.
Step 5 contrast feels like variety and choices. Step 1 contrast feels like obstacles and discomfort. Step 5 is what your inner being feels like when you're in contrast. Step 1 is what humans usually feel like when they're not under the influence of inner being, when they're in contrast.
Got it, okay. Then more step 1.
Step 5 contrast is like, bring it on. That was so clarifying. I didn't even really know I wanted that. I'm so much more clear about who I am. I feel richer and broader and more expansive. I have an eagerness for life now that I didn't have before this contrast. It's renewed something in me. I'm so happy that there's something more for me to attract. That's step 5 contrast. Step 1 contrast is, are you kidding me?
So the term I had used before was stuck in my joy, and in this process, I've had way more step 5 moments where I'm like, I didn't even know that I could get even more happy and have more enjoyment in life. And I've had more step 1 moments that have been more contrast serving of going, that's interesting. Though?
Having a step 1 moment and knowing you're having one is a good thing, not a bad thing. And a series of step 1 moments makes you desire or throw rockets of desire into your vortex. A series of step 1 moments makes you decide you're going to get out ahead of it and you're going to have more step 5 moments than step 1 moments. A series of step 1 moments makes you realize that you're taking it all too seriously. You're being too hard on yourself. And usually, if you're having a lot of step 1 moments, usually it means you're still trying to control the perspective of others, which you cannot do. You cannot control how others are viewing you. You just can't do it. And when you finally give that up, you're free.
Mm-hmm. So I guess that goes to the question of...
It does, goes exactly to the question.
It's almost like you knew, almost. It's almost like you knew what I was going to ask. Which is if you have some level of... And I know what you're going to say when I use this term, and so I'm trying to say it lightly, but if you have some level of standards of what you find acceptable, and for me, when I tend to get more bothered by when somebody does something to somebody I care about than if somebody does something to me, if that makes sense.
It does, but
okay. It's both bad.
What you just said is, my belief system makes me believe that it's virtuous to put up with stuff when it's directed at me, but I'm more diligent and vigilant about it when it's towards someone else, because my belief system says that being a protector is a good thing and being a culper is a good thing too. So I can cope with the injustice and the unfairness, but don't do it to somebody else, or don't do it to somebody I love. And you're right, none of it is in alignment, but these are all the books that the humans have been writing. At the heart of this, we'll be very brief here because you're on the brink of something really worth discussing. But at the heart of this is a basic belief that goes like this: society, or segments of society, or teachers, or parents, or just humans in general, what they say to others is, you should not be selfish. And it's just such a ridiculous statement, because what they're actually saying is, it's my selfishness or yours, and I choose mine, not yours. So they're not against the concept of selfishness because they can't stop perceiving and desiring for things to please them. They're just against you getting what you want. If somebody has to win, it should be me, is what almost everybody is saying. And that competition is what's keeping most people from the joy that they deserve, because it doesn't have to be that way. From your inner being's point of view, everyone can win. You're not in competition for resources. When you pinch yourself off from resources, they didn't take them from you. You did. You just weren't under the influence of the resources. You were under the influence of the lack of the resources. And when you're under the influence of the lack of the resources, then you squabble with one another over the resources, and you judge them for getting more than their fair share of a non-existent pie. But when you are consistently tuned in and you realize that the universe is yielding to whoever tunes into it whatever they want, then you're joyful when others get what they want. Let's break this down, because this is really a leading edge conversation. This all sort of sounded like we were talking about resources, like who's getting the cars and who's getting the pies and who's getting the money. And people do squabble over that and feel jealous over that. There's nothing that makes you feel more the lack of you getting something you want than to see somebody else getting exactly what you want. Esther remembers Tracy. She was just out of high school, and she wanted a new red car. It was a beautiful, beautiful car. And she figured out how to accomplish it. She had enough earning, and they said no, 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 no. And Jerry wouldn't help her, which made her really mad at him. But she figured it out, and she got her car. And the car wheels were not touching the road for a long time. The car just hovered just above the road. She was so happy in that car. And one day she went back to her apartment in San Antonio, and she called her mother crying because there was a man eating out of the dumpster in her parking lot. And she felt so bad that she had this beautiful car and he was eating out of the dumpster. And Esther said, well, honey, do you think if you didn't have that car that he wouldn't be eating out of the dumpster? And she said, oh, yeah, they're not related, are they? Because the abundance is streaming down, and people are letting it in or not letting it in. And your opportunity to assist others in letting it in is through the clarity of your example of letting it in, not by your withholding it from yourself and walking around as an example of somebody who doesn't let it in. And so it sounds like we're talking about the competition for the stuff, and to some extent we are, because there is no competition. But what we're really talking about is, am I under the influence of source, or am I under the influence of something else? Am I allowing what's in my vortex to flow with ease into my experience, or am I blocking it off and preventing it from coming because of beliefs that I am holding that just aren't letting it in? That is the singular question to ask yourself on a moment-to-moment basis.